Hello, where am I right now? I am not able to get through to the. Who could imagine that I've been back in the States, I don't know, about 3 weeks ago, but I guess about a month. And once I get back about a month, flew from, I did Guyana back to America, got to Santa Rosa, California. I flew to New York and I was able to get from New York to Santa Rosa on train. So that took about 3 days. And then spent some time in Santa Rosa. And as you can see here, I'm in Madison, Alabama. And uh, this type of things, it's open sometimes, but it's not open today. It has a zipper and it's not open. So it kind of leads that way, if you can see how I did that part there. And getting there. Now, this in Santa Rosa, uh, what am I seeking here? Not being being away from my family. I have to say, once I have an ex-husband, something I haven't really pursued, but the knowledge of it was completely vague to the child. But when it actually happens, uh, believable, perhaps not, but very mellow internally not, but very mellow with the person. Why? I have extremities. This type of mysteriousness can cause that, I suppose. And if it's understandable how it happens, then I am happy that I have arrived. But it's uh, really kind of gets to me sometimes this way of the length of the time as flesh. Now, how do I know when it's the Phoebe or just a way of whatever? No. How do I know when it's I call that tar and I call that Feroz and then the Phoebe based on. But as you come, as you live with me, you will be, I don't think I like her, but she probably will like that now if comments of that were made. And if it was, does it phase the child? No, based on humans. In other words, I wasn't censé to know these things, and I wasn't censé to speak these things. Now, before getting into the depths of what could be pelting out there for somebody else, these are just preliminaries, and I just sense how the girl kind of sets the few items that she has. If she says that word based on a pelt, she puts it there. And then this type of gondole that she found, it's kind of old, but what it misses, it's a kind of a sponge. And this information could make the a little sad because getting back in there, it's too much. So it will say no to that there, and so that part could be quite important. And when it's a missing component, it's bothersome. Why? You could say the world craves and then it shreds and expects. If the mom is understanding these things, why her is the question. And I guess, and that's all I can say. Now, you probably wouldn't understand that, and that's why sometimes the girl, does this sometimes, and then have somebody else in. That's perhaps the descendants line of the other side do something of this part, and it would say there was an I know, and then it becomes a chanson, and then there was a I guess, a guess, and that part is still there. And when it's a guess, it doesn't like man. And when it realizes that's a little too late, what encompasses the girl could have been this here, and that you would understand, and then gradually releases and goes and allows the little girl to go and live. Probably, I'm thinking, when I get to this point of a ponge, why it could be found in certain places that it can be pulled out and be damaging to man. In other words, were they looking for a prototype? Perhaps they were, but the prototype is quite interesting based on just and puts it in a way that kind of probably does type of smarts man, not man, and not man. Will be something of a, you get this, you're not content, you get this, you're not content. What are you really seeking is when you get to that destruction, you're really wanting to put that person away in the mentalities sections, and you're being caught. And when it is, it kind of rejoices this part based on any accusations from La France. Yay! And says, I don't hate La France. I probably do. Probably not. Would say, I should have perhaps made that decision. It keeps her quiet because of this part of her. So it would say, how did she know? She had kids. And for her, those were probably the most important based on that type of, I call them dynasty. Not this of dynasty, real dynasty, real dynasty. And once it comes out that way, then it permits to eliminate these things. So I guess it comes out perhaps in an equal and a square. So the girl will not be equal, the girl would be a square, and the square would be something of, I don't know, this is we're something of a giant in the land of Guyana. They're probably going to get rid of that giant before I get there, but there's evidences of the giant in that square, and the equal goes. Now, when it gets to that point, that could be the last thing of which this part of the child, and that part, if you recognize, it really has a part of the kingdom that does to it, so it alerts them if they're seeking to kind of put this girl away based on those type of things. You have been caught, and the girl had to rebound on that part to cause man to want to praise for this demonstration. Now the demonstration for the girl goes huge, and huge would probably be what type of equals to something that is very grande, like a boom that way, and not a go, go, go. So America would be go, 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 and not Guyana. So the girl would be this. So this would explain the environment that I'm in right now as a way of training her how to be still to the commands of her voice. Now, just say, I would say the voice for her would say, um, and the girl rolls along. So the mental issue after decades become yay, and not something that is that way, and that gets this attention. Why that part of nature could be wiped out and puts other nation, and what they're expecting, the girl probably cannot deliver. In other words, what is of this of her cannot deliver those things, and the equivalent of this is not important anymore based on finding that goal now, and that part. In other words, if I'm here, do not seek me. You go and leave her alone. Now, go, go, go would be leave you go alone and leave the windows, these type of things closed. I do open them sometimes, but because of the zipper, I had to kind of keep them that way because of some type of revelations that were going to met based on this type of recording. Now, Once it does that to the belly, so the grandmother would be able to correct that what she lays. So it would say correcting it would probably call for something of this nature. I don't know, bubbles, bubbles, bubbles. And bubbles is not a behavior problem. It would be something of a, not a justice or evidence. It will be something of something I have to get to these things. Something of a flop. So you would say uh, bubbles is correct based on already done. So it's coming to that conclusion that France would understand that based on their system of how humans are made, can they flop? Absolutely not. So you would say somebody like I don't know, somebody I don't know, like the grandfather, his life could have been this completely sept and has it this way. And once we figure that out, it kind of puts them in a very delicate spot of I cannot believe Italy, I cannot believe Greece not, but Greece is constantly bombarded by this of themselves. So that would say this takes this, the hearing from her, and her belly rolls. And when it does, it doesn't necessarily know they're thinking the paroles of the child. I would say see, yes. And in other words, see, yes, and would get this done, and up it goes, and the girl rolls and rolls and rolls and rolls, and when it seeks to tranquility, that quiet moment on the plane, on the train, there's always and behind could be bombarded this way, and they're seeking answers how to correct those things, or seeking to correct their life of which does this to the mom and cannot handle it based on the moment, but can handle it based on this here. So this here does this to the child based on videos man would suspect, and it does not do so. As far as I could say, it probably does so based on how Santa Rosa was. So these parts will be pulled out and thrown San Francisco up, and would know that by now without being a flop, and has to be able to deliver, and fails its mission. And when it fails its mission, the girl would find it out on the rooftop of like places that can be demolished and have a problem with overpass up. So it go to not Greece yet. It will go to places like that giant. Like if it gets a flow that way, then that flow that way would be of Greece. And if they were doing it in that part, like we're at Columbia Elementary School, if they were seeking a house of that nature, then they would get caught today. And I would not talk, I would have to seek a lawyer in ASAP based on the financial aspect of this part of things. This mom, this part of the mom, she would find that out, but has enough paperwork evidences of how to kind of navigate with the lawyer, but based on this part of the mom. So it will not be seeking these things anymore based on this here. It says, for example, if I have a solar lamp, based on the peel, I need those type of things. So those type of things eventually will and goes. So those are the things that are what solar people do and feeds them, not things of these, but this would say why it was important. Man seeks it is important a lot of time to get to that next destination you're thinking, until it's based on the bamboos of France, why they're having a lot of problems moving forward and finding themselves on the streets like the mom. And the mom figured that out based on just going to France this last time, flying from San Francisco to Greece, getting evidences based on this the hearings. So the hearings would say that their Zeuses are being decoded and they're being flogged. So when they have these type of rituals, that's why they do this to themselves, and they're not Arabics. So their genetics are not Arabics either. So they keep doing these type of things to themselves, telling the heavens that we're not doing well. So you're seeing it in this part of them. So what happened? It enters into this the canal of the hearing, and to them. So once it does that to them, they are not doing well. So it shuts in. So when that happens, they have to seek specialists, of which they don't have. So the secret was, what are you going to do about it? You just have to sense the Greeks here are being taken care of. They said as she speaks, in specialist office, if it's done in hops, it hops like Subway Surfers, how it hops. That's what she calls dejas. And when it hops, they get to put you aside, and you'll get it later in life. So you have to wait. You want to be too rambunctious. You want to be too more than the other person. And when that part comes, then the Greek had a moment in the deja. You're not getting to know that word, and that's what it's getting to them. So these things will attack them in courts. So they would take this from the child. Why they would suspect, based on the prophecy of the child, they did not deliver, and this fell from them. So when you did not deliver, the writings could be there mysteriously and nobody could get it. So that as she slept, years what, these things were revealed to mom, and gets the scribes to do so. So that would say, can they lie? Possibly, based on this stealing. So that attack on Greece could take mom to the end that way, and could be a problem for her kids. See, but it would probably stay there because France is not understanding that and constantly being threatened to get deaf. So it says the crowd on the streets, those in the gazebos types, could be threatened this way, this way. And when they are, they have to get out. Can these be handed back to them based on the president? It probably can be, and allow this part to get rustic on them because of how it was pulled out of nature and dispersed. So this part also, so the inside will say you will probably have to get the hearing aids and hit it in that way. So when it does it that way, you will not get the noises, and it will soothe you because of what Greeks has done. They will have to stay empty, and that animosity is letting them know that she had to spend some time there in Greece many years ago, and didn't like this France, and took it out on the child as a babe, up gone in their government. So once that's done, the girl would kind of smell her nose a bit to determine whether how, if it's when you have to bury this type of species or this type of person, it the girl will look at nature and determine it by this type of blade of grass, for example. This type of blade of grass here, the blade of grass could be put, and this allows, I don't know, you probably don't, allows. So when I would do that, for example, naturally speaking, the naturalness would show in the hop of the mom. So Greeks would get this sept, they're thinking, and put it against the French people for this type of talks outside of this TV. So I would say it doesn't really matter. Why? Because French could be chosen because of that. Why this part would not have taken the TV. You have to look at it that way. And once it's done that way, you will get egg So the girl would be invited to go there based on meeting that type of man. And once he put certain things out there, then he could have lost this of himself only today if the rest was. So if the girl got really mad and blast, then this part here wasn't called for. In other words, this part here, take who? That part there, where the taxi were, they would say that's an important hub for how are you going to do this? Are you seeking bride? So bride would be removed to cater to France. Now you will sense that you're wanting to deal with America. Too late. I cannot deal with you that way. I am not a whore for seeking to deal with me for you to gain money. You have to do it from I don't know, but it would say, I think, up and have to deal with the blade of grass. So the blade of grass would be something that it's very this, a nail of this nature. So if you're having another land dealing with this of the blade of grass, now how would I know so? Based on how this fell from that type of hop. So once it does it that way, then you will sense that you are seeking to manipulate the child. How are you going to do it? By telling that this man accused. So I was there at 57, so he could go to jail. So he would sense that he will, and that's accorded today based on this environment and is into this type of man. Has to be, is it relating to her first pregnancy? First one that was done in that type of hospital, of which had to escape the hop. And then up grease is pitched out and dispersed so that you're not able to get up there and go now. So once we know that part, I should have been interrupted at the airport of Greece. I cannot do so based on the hops of a lady's back. And that's what they would realize, that who comes this way could possibly be a hop of somebody that way. Somebody that way, and that person, if she happens to be French, they will get her today and put her back so that she faces the justice. If she was born in the States, then that's a problem for this American. So your kind of hits are very subtle, and that's a problem. So now it would say that person would never think that it would be able to escape. So now it says the blade of grass was found this way. So this, the person, I don't know who is going to take this part, and this is the blade of grass. So this is going to have to put them away. So the blade of grass, it's, this is kind of personal. So they will suspect how meeting this person, and because of this of the child, cannot meet. She will have to deal with how she's going to deal with lawyers, because her family could possibly not want her with lawyers based on this part, to get to know that again, and explain to him to see if he would go crazy. Can she possibly talk like this with him? Possibly not. She comes quite studio alone. Quite studio alone, and it will be demonstrated like I know and a guess would do that way, and oftentimes it's probably by the blowings. So the blowings will seek. I don't know how that seeks it that way. It probably seeks it that way. And I don't know, that's way it's probably going to be seeked. How to know whether that can really get here, knowing that it's probably not far, to get to know this part of the set. Now, I wouldn't say it's that at all. Cannot be kingdom. See, it could be based on what I know of myself, that part there. So that part, what I know of myself, could be I would say that would be tar. I call it tar. And why I call it tar? It deals with like diesel. So diesel would say that explains the temperature perhaps of the moon. In other words, could it have shown in that hand based on that propeller in Florida at that army base? Perhaps. So when it does, this fell that way and cannot interrupt anymore. So a lot of times it flows, but it's not up to date. And when it was tested in Guyana, it's not up to date either. Greece goes, and in France, they're suspecting it comes very close to the peel. So what was probably missing was a bed, and it would tell them a little late, they're suspecting. So that part of that would have to be gathered up, they're suspecting, and head back to France and gets a nice home, unable to swine himself based on this. Why? It's too much for him to have lost his wife. He only looks that way. Too much for him to have to lose the conviviality of his family, and too much for La France to have to lose any of us. So it would put it like this problem of France, they're thinking, for their citoyen, and this problem becomes bed, which is that carry. Now, when it does it that way, the girl has to deal with it a bit later based on cannot be immediately. So when I say I'm not a whore based on men seeking her, she kind of puts her life based on that of the Amsterdam, based on how her nose smells her, like everybody else. Now, can you go forward and do your own thing? And based on somebody as Mathilde has a hop, that's way up and goes. Now, could her family know about that, her dad? Possibly not. Could her mom? Possibly, and is of peace with it? Perhaps not. If she seeks the few smokes or the drinkings or the eating of the meat a certain way based on the comments of that woman only. She's not allowed to do so with anybody else. Too detrimental with the hops of the child. So it will say that if the family seeks those things based on her, the girl gets blocked, and she doesn't release things on her belly OC and listens and allow a nasty detriment. So if it's suspected they can secure that, then a lot of times it seeks to put it against this part of that grandmother. And then they would appear to come in and not say a word to her. Sometimes it goes that way. So if that was her insurance, with detriments of this nose of the child, and the nose is not able to be dispersed ever. So once that's done that way, the girl bows with her G and accepts her calling. So when she does in the hops uh, in life. Now, when I deal with this part, so that part will come to put this, she would say, too late. So if she did not know so, then it calls for the girl to hop through life. And by the time the girl is done, she finds herself this way because of that part. Enough. Why, what is she doing there? And blames her. So that part, if it's understandable, she applauds. Why, that part is too hard for me to really pour into based on the news, but based on, okay, my dad could have been hurt really badly, and she appears CSAT in her hops, and but cannot remember these things. The mind cannot phantom those things. So if they pull this out from the girl, what is their expectation? Mentalize her. But as she mentalizes, they seek to steal her calling. So that calling will do this to them and allows them to go through life to see exactly what they want. It's the puzzle that is of life. This, the puzzle. So the life will go in a minute while the girl has to gather up, and oftentimes seeking to gather up is calling things that says we have been there, done that, based on that type of passage. So this would be a passage that causes Greece to have fallen, and I didn't have the proof of it until today. So it will say they had to surrender, and surrendering carries them like Gaza, and never to speak to those Pope again. I cannot deal with talking about Turkey. Now, once those things are done, it seeks this for repentance, and oftentimes I have a part of this which could be what is something of a this of mom that puts itself here. So when it does it that way, it's telling man that the head of the child leaks with this solar and allows things of importance. For example, if mom is of like a seer, which would be considered what she calls tar, and cannot be exposed. So it leaks these things out, and because of the prophecy of Greece, they pull it and put it aside to mentalize the lady so that they steal these powers. And once these things were done, they get this here and put away so that they are not able to speak anymore. So once these things are done, the girl is getting on V to go there and have to figure it out this way. So she would figure it out at the end of that trip before this one, based on how she rised, and that would be the seer. So once she rises, that's it for man. But it goes a little deep this way. You have to live these things. So man obviously tried to distort these things based on trying to have the mom close to her. So this type of grandma she grows up with cannot said and knows of the hops and would pierce that belly until she makes it. So you throw her everywhere that is dangerously outrageous, and the hops tell us the contraire. So you have to back out, and you don't know how to back out. So the girl is getting the opportunity to do it this way. Once those things are done, these are shut in while we haven't gotten there at all yet. And sometimes I'm telling my family things in the future and not dealing with this here. So it calls for this here. So what is it called? I don't know yet, but it would put this for, did we go too far with it? Possibly, based on something of a, I don't know, something of this type of computer or this type of bag that she have here. Could say she's probably right on track of how that's calling would have been, and could they have been smarted out? And that's the question she would seek at that trip based on if she mentioned burial. Another time, a lot of times, if you come with this spiel, your burial has to be unique. In other words, what it's composed of would be blue. Like this type of chaussure she would purchase in Guyana would represent blue, and a blue of a this. So once it does it that way, this peel, and that's how it portrays as she looks. So those type of things, and I would say, even if she has any type of pair of glasses, you're not allowed to touch these things. She would have these explanations because they're actual with that calling, and oftentimes it puts that part there. So that part will put it there. So if she uses her oils and her savon to do so, then we have a conflict and that washes out that part. Do not seek to throw her off the terrain or this her property to put her to walk on the road. She cannot handle that part, and that's a threat with Greece hearings every day. So it will say it will relieve them, and that's when the family would get this of themselves, of understanding the hatred of that nation over the feet of the child. So once we get this cleared out based on that, of that type of seer, it's put, I would say it's not a seer until it is a seer, but a very peculiar seer based on I cannot get to that position. So that position says we have tried in America and it's not working, and once she does that, she sees the destruction of Greece, put it back, and cannot deal with them anymore. So it could says, okay, I could possibly imagine that I was not called to live in Greece. And once you are understanding this not, it shuts in. Next thing you have to kill that man to get her to marry another man, another whore, and cannot deal with those things. So it will say once she sees it, she cannot allow it and gets atrocious. So this part here, she would say she puts it there. So once we deal with that part there, we'd understand, is she on that walk of correcting that part by doing this? And once she does that part, is it her? And figured out over that this part of how they seek screws, putting it on, and this could be a grease also, putting that screw as that sear and causing it to rip this part out of the child. So when it does it this way, using the Asian sush, the Asian had to surrender this to the heavens based on how you do so. If you do so, well, I don't know so. And that part is being investigated intricately. Why the Asians have to back out. This is too much of a hatred. So it will say this would have put that back for her drinking purposes or whatever she does with it. Now, when it does it that way, if this is probably not putting this that way, you'll never know. The girl is kind of wild as a young child, and those parts her. So when it does it that way, that part there would accuse Asia. So when you do, Asia would accuse you of sabotaging the oils and the savon of the child based on she works through these things. Would you seek that question? Well, this part would seek in the hop, and you are it's the life of it's almost like putting somebody to be, you'll be amnesty one day based on you have to leave your family and friends and go and start a new life, marry, have a child, and get out. And that's part will a civic matter that is illegal. So it's like seeking the child, their suspect, with that this part of her, and gets caught and finds the culprit and has to wait to get through. So it puts these things away a bit and get back to that access. That would be that type of sozi. So I would call it this also, this part here, glass, and then up it goes so that they understand what they were trying to do this way with her. So it and it comes this way to the child, and when it does it this way, it puts it there while I am not getting through to my destination, and it does this to the child. Up, I cannot deal with it, and then reappears again and starts. So the girls hop up, gone, that's enough. It's how the girl walks and deals with her, and oftentimes it's very fiery. So once it's fiery, it can cause this rupture between the glass and the seer that is not able to wrap well of how it fuels her as she goes. So the family could never have seen her that way based in France. This part of the world was tested, and it becomes just a circle. So that circle would means shoe for the mom, and doesn't know what that means until we walk through it. So if we walk through it a little bit and have to recule, then that's a civic matter of France today that has to get to deal with it immediately and rectify the shoe of this only, and at that part's features to keep you out, because you could do this to want to get to know the hops or the civics, or I don't know what you're seeking to know of the life before it happens, so that you could put them in the same mental bondage as Greece. It only looks that way. So this type of family would, why? Because they are this of this girl and could not know her and could not get this to her dad. Instead of the collision would be this to her dad. So this to her dad would punch that seer, pierce the glass, and it shreds the universe. So she could not have met her dad ever. And that would say that's why she is this to the universe and had to matrize her. But it would to say that have to deal with whatever. We cannot assume these things, unfortunately, and that's why the girl is being challenged, meaning that I am weary of what perhaps, and the philosophical seeks that coming from this type of this, it scribes this way, so the girl scribe would be this way, and it goes very long that way. You would almost say it's like the type of this of the stairs of that back step of the grandma. In other words, it comes that way and it keeps going that way. So you could pose the wood on that side goes away based on whatever seeks that there was wiped out. Well, Greece couldn't get that part, so this is what they did. So once that's done, this would be more comprehensible of the naggings, that's part of that boy, why they could have used it and has to put this upon him. So when they have to put this upon him, his hops reveals these type of things on himself and have to be taught a bit to figure out that you are seeking that France at that epoch could have aborted the mission and get so that will lead him back to France one day and do this to the child in this, and it's not proving to do so. So from one place to the other, Seattle was tried, this California, this on the train from New York to California, Guyana, Greece, France. So France, when it gets close to this part, is not enough because of this, and when she is this of the planet, it pelts the brains of the child. So it will say it damages this the Q of the child and puts that part that way, that does this to the planet, so it has to pull in and seeks the relaxation of the mom at most times, because more she carries, more she is this to the planet and have to be able to settle those type of things. With man, never. So it would say she could see you that way, so you have to be outside of her range. So once you invite her in this country based on this type of immigration, and this is what this released too late, but the girl will get it from the P, all these things. So I don't need this backing and forth in at all to avoid any conflicts. So it will say this pelting there kind of put this away while we have figured out we don't need to see where the brokenness of how you want your life to be in your hops. For all you know, your hops is the bazaar. So this would say you would choose the most bazaar to get rid of it, or a lady who has a hearing problem based on Greece tackling the universe and had to disperse of her. So it so now it will say you have to stay away from her, and you have to sense that if I seek the store, the girl goes cautiously, and once the girl gets a and it deals with her transaction, puts it back. Now it cannot deal with that philosophical talk just that way. Now if you're seeking to deal the woman by purposely seeking her, that can be fatal. So that works that way. You cannot seek her. Billions and billions have sought her for that mental institution to rise against this of her and everything else of her everywhere in the United States. So this part here comes in, this part here comes in totally, and cannot stomach the United States. So this part of the girl had to be tested extensively. So it would lead to this if she had left the earth. So once it's active, it risens, and oftentimes you could get it with this feet of the child, how it so it kind of puts her to say once she's able to get to this here, oh, you will be accused, and then she kind of switches it off and then puts it back. Now once these are explained a little, I guess the most important part, it's this of the mom based on things that rumbles the earth. This way can we avoid those things? To be very simply, based on the peel, no. Based on how she did that part there. Cannot relieve this part. In other words, it puts it like a something like uh, something like a zoom here, and oftentimes if this is next to be changed based on these type of peels, why it's just speaking that it's not being that it's being this somewhere, like something of this type of magnet. So those type of boards that I had with those type of like chalkboards explains this really well, but I could not have pinpointed these things yet. So it took me on a long walk in Guyana, 6 7 months, before coming back, going back there. And a lot of times if I'm seeking that it doesn't tell me because I didn't get the hive. It would tell me because I got that institution, why they could have fallen this way and seek this instead of this here, and cause the lady could not extend after 3 days. So it will say the hive have done that also, and the person who had pulled her to down to get the metro have committed that crime also. So when it comes to that part, do you have to leave the earth? Not necessarily, based on this type of tranquility, it does not, but it leads to want to be kind of apart from man, but very this way. So she would yearn for to get probably that way, and it kind of gets a lot of work done. So she would kind of expose this part here, that's something of this part here, that part there. She would, how is it seeking to be shown? I don't know. I guess it doesn't. Oh, anyway, it's a Chrome book. The mark is Acer. I would say probably closer to French. Once it's that Chromebook, she would find a lot of this in the Chromebook, and this meaning that she can get to this the nose and this part of this part here, and she doesn't ever want to speak about her family. She portrays to them, and oftentimes doesn't seek those things for her family based on how that the dynasty would be this, and when it does it that way, it that way and releases that information quietly to them based on a very in, so that the flesh doesn't get crazy. So that will explain why she said that part, and then have to deal with that dad who is not happy based on how he had to lie. In other words, his lie would lead him to this of the child one day and expose, and that part he would have been dumbstruck, but quite ready for it because the nose would have been prepared this way. And once he gets that part, he would have sought help in that part of France, which is where Concord, and gets the answers he's looking for. Now he has to hop all over. Christianity has to be left alone based on not believing mom. But the extremists of mom would say she probably wasn't that extreme. She just pinpointed certain things and come in. And that's good to know. Why? Because in the land of Guyana, I was very this with the Christian walk. So it kind of felt hard, but that's how it was. And I would probably say as much. Probably did I know that heaven, this type of mystery existed? Probably not. You would never know families. The family could know more than mom how it's dealt with, and this was shut in because of the peeing. And oftentimes this was done for that separation, examining it this way is the only way. And then when it gets to the zoom part and it has these type of things that really seeks to work, if it has this type of you would call it laser, that part there. So this laser would put that, I guess, this way. So if this is the only way I'm finding it, then the one that was there, it has everything of the peel of the child for the hat. So the hat will be something of somebody of this, probably of Greece, and is a mental case. So it will say that this has to be crushed completely. So this part of the laser would put it and do this by just walking away and have to back out. So if it says I want to do that until a certain age, then it kind of disregards, the laser disregards those type of insults and it puts the child back there. So once it does it that way, then it flips and it comes back. I guess that's a kind of a luxury. So it goes that in order to get that, it flips back, and then it gets to this part here, which kind of creates that type of illusion that tells man that this wants to kind of, if it seeks to that type of destruction, that the girl had it for quite a while and it's still here. So once it's still here, it kind of tells of the laser part that it probably, and it's very philosophical, I suppose, but the laser is still here and the girl cleans it completely for the remainder of her life. So the laser focuses a lot on this of the child, and a lot of times the girl did sense a brokenness about it, and how the hops would do it is give it back to the dynasty. So she would have the opportunity of seeing her grandmother in her hop, her father in the hop, her I know in the hop. So when it does it that way, then it pulls back a bit to deal with this part here. And this part would say, is it like a, not a couch, a magnet? This magnet puts it as if it puts it on the freewheel. And that's when she used to get those stationaries for jotting down these things. Now, once I get this part in the hops, backing out a bit would prevent the girl to do this there of her cubs, of how it could follow those things that way. And it's going to have a moment like before, so just in case, and never the dad, because I probably had to meet him and do this, and that's it. And not having a fantasy, because the earth has its secrecies, and once that is done, I would probably do in anger and says legit with this going there, and in other words, I'm not getting there if not. So for example, this part there, it could have a there and puts it back this way. So when it does it this way, when the girl comes, she would go through and do a little shopping with her to get this type of blankie and complete the mission. So she's just a way of saying once we get to the carry of the legitimacy this way and not having to recule, but we are in the dirt here, so up and then leave that part of her family alone. Now this can evolutionize based on knowing it. So this, the family would know, so even the petite, and then comes back and says, oh. So once this is done, she does this to her chapeau of the accusations of heavens and earth, because the heavens obviously, probably they're thinking, they cannot know they can, but know of a, and not the rest. So that part, they would feed on it until, and those things goes to say it meets that up, and you will be, but go. Now, if you're going to turn around, then I have take some drastic measures with Greece up and then gets back to this part here and fans. Once that fan was done, completing the mission with that mom, we're done like a that way. And once it's done, I probably from start to finish would see that mom's life, but the mom was not allowed to see her life because of the grandmother. She was my guardian. So once she was, the mom has to go now. So once it's done that way, at the end goes this to her, knowing that the girl says tata. And once that's done, I don't know the rest. So that's a conflict. So the conflict is drastic. So it has to deal with a lawyer, but that part I probably have another video of it, if I may permit. And then we will have it gets to that of how other people wants to know his, and it's an impossibility. If they think it is, it chops them. You have to know that it's a code of ethic that cannot be franchir. People probably wants to get to that philosophical, but I cannot do so anymore. So it will says you have to leave him all. It's guarantee could be this of him with a mystery. Any of this in later, I guess that's why it's a shoot would seek it like that way. I would do that with my Q-Tex. Q-Tex like this, I would get this from the land of Guyana and I use the Q-Tex on that part. So it couldn't be guaranteed that way, but if it's giving anything with lies, then we are conflicted and has to wait sometimes for his judge to reveal those things. Sometimes it depends on the advancement of this mom and wants to not do so. So it sometimes do this to him and have to back out. So it has to say, do not seek those things. Philosophical talk, I cannot get into those things. Now, once we are able to see the knob, it's a no. We cannot do so. So it puts this away, and we'll get to I don't know the grandma. That's grandma. I would do this. Why people would seek those things. So the only thing I would know of the grandma would be that cemetery, and would let her know, and that's all she knows. It gets really bad if they're seeking those things. So it will say that if that's Uncle Pissed there, then he's in trouble and has to go far. So the girl gets back to this part and speaks. A shoe can be named and named something of this of Greece when it could be named I don't know, this type of oval. It could be named knots, for example, the shoe, and then instead of Saturn, for example. So that could have a this moment and could be fatal with not having it, or it sows and has to go away. Now, if you're seeking to steal that, then the court has it that way and is seeking sometimes to put them to steal billions from banks, institutions. So it would say some this of Greece. Take and the cherubims. What I would know as this, it becomes cherubim for a Greek philosopher. For the child, it will become a kuto. And oftentimes, I'm not really called to remember these things, but I probably will based on a kuto. So I would, sorry, that part there. So what would be a kuto is I get a kuto. This is a kuto. I would do that part, like peel oranges. Like if my visions and dreams are rampant and will never go away based on the laser. So it will say be based on this type of kuto. It could have been part of the laser, and there she has it. And it could say this would probably be on this part there, and some type of exponent got it out and did it. So the kuto that was kind of pulled out in the Republic of Guyana could be something that is a deja and was taken like the slippers. So those type of slippers has to seek that type of life they have instead of this here. So this bank could have the child based on when she was married, could have been legit, but based on herself, could have it based on somebody that is that go away, and not of that there. And that's a problem with the girl at that bank. And the better bank would be Regions Bank, would have something legit for her and cannot deny her. So the courts are probably waiting for her. So it would say, I am not a life. And that sends a message to say, oh, she based on this of grace, it can happen when they're not listening, you would say, until it becomes do not see those pub. And then they would realize you are coming in based on what you know, and allow that little girl to grow up without exposing herself, so that when she has her cubs, they know who she is. Now they're facing a new mom. How are they going to handle this? So it would say, based on that part, they're probably not allowed, when they're not allowed to know, it's up and deals with it that way. So when it's based on this of what she speaks, then it goes safely and sabotages them forever. Once it does, the Greeks of those type of parts of the world were given silver spoons spinning to be away from the child. And that's a problem based on Negroes of this land of America. And oftentimes, if you're contracted to work with them, they have to surrender their jobs that way. And in the churches also, but cannot be with the whites. That's conflicting. Based on this, there's a problem. So you just have to sense that it's this conflict here. So once it is, and it allows the girls to flow and allows her family to flow. Petite aussi. Now, because of this type of things, I would say dealing with this every day at whether she lodged at one or the other of her loins has to be every day and equipped with this part here and that, in case you're seeking this infidelity of stealing, because forever since this happened, her passport, this part, even the Guyanese are stealing these things from her. If she carries it this way, then I guess it's fine. And if it's purchased and full, what a thing there. So but your mind is not corrupt. It's just the conflict of ages you're thinking until you choose not to believe, and that part choose not to believe. So you would say, if it's because of Negro, well, I guess this is the time to say not only can it not be, but it cannot be rectified by changing when the work was done en plus. And besides being the work done en plus, you cannot be, you're not only evil, but that's corny behavior has to kind of hit them hard, they're suspecting, because I would not dare to want to steal uh, somebody's job. In other words, it's your job, it's your chair. Up and never speak about this back and forth again. Now, once this is done, the girl would say that to get, for example, getting to a sort of a drive, not a testing, a drive of how to handle this here, how to handle this type of seer here. So it would go to seek and getting those things coda. It's kind of sweaving, so that's wonderful. So I'll probably get to that in a minute. So it will say, when I get to this part here, it will say whoa to this part here of that of dealing with the kuto. So that's the kuto. So what is this of the kuto? Is it the kuto that mom was dealing with? Uh, this would be in the shoe of glass. So I would do it that way. So when I'm dealing with that part, you could say not glass, and could become a crypt to that of the seer. But not something that is going to be drastically. I would show how I was able to capture her with the laser. And she comes that way. So she has her mouth that way. So when she does it this way, we see her wings and we see her bottom that way kind of situation, and then we see her doing this part. So when she does it that way, oftentimes to capture that, I was on a hop there, and the hop would be known Plutar. And when I captured her, apparently man was busy trying seeking the woman, so it kind of deals with it when she got back to no, it deals with it immediately, and up it goes. This is how she says up, and leaves it alone. Why? That type of hop would eventually pull the mom in, puts her there, and instructs her. And when it instructs her, it's telling her of her nose. And oftentimes the nose refuses to speak. So if it refuses to speak, I would say, it is you, Phoebe, and then it refuses to speak. So once that is there, it kind of puts this back there, and getting that away, why it becomes destructive, and then that seer starts to. So she has to realize that part. This is showing you something that you may know, and nobody else can know based on the shoe. It knowing what she's planning on doing, and has to sync with the mom. And once that's accomplished, then the girl can put this away of how she pierces that side of the universe and causes to cram this of the child, crams the olfactory of this mom, and cause it to drive this woman to anything. And once it's done, you could even say she's really a hoggish or a piggy. Up to that type of hop this way to capture that moment. We don't like to change those things. And anything that escaped based on little girls by any kind of proverbs or anything of that sort goes back this way according to the evolution and not based on age, so that mom's nose captures those things and deals with it this way and stop coming after her this way, so she don't have to say those evil words. Now once those are done, she would know of that part of this part here. She would know of those things, and I guess based on this would know of this other one there, and puts that there. And once we know of that part, we can relax a bit based on how she pelted things out. And I'm already 1 hour in this conversation. So when it, I probably am not put that back and leave it there. Now because of that hesitation, it could be in a little more thinking based on something of an ant, for example. One of those ants, I probably will get in a slide one day of how she can get the ants and get it on a laser and see how Greece failed their mission of the ants. The ant would be that big. So that will cause this girl to be injured about, I don't know, maybe between 7 and 10. She was injured that way, and that way would cause the nail to be extremely that way, and that way would come only because of the concord of that from Paris this last time. So oftentimes I will see the concord this way, and see the concord this way, and seeks to lay my head to sleep, and then puts these things back, and could probably get it that way with that hop quietly. And would the girl know so? it seems based on the nail, she probably knew, based on the nose of this of her, and is cautious. And she can and allow her cups to be able to do that, you see, and then gets the drive based on being at one with herself and not dealing with her surroundings. So it goes that way. So when you see, for example, she purchases these type of things, sometimes mom, I don't know, it's like a comforter, whatever, the bag would say something of that nature. You would see sometimes she forgetting things or it's purposely put back. Sometimes it's based on this part, and hmm, and you have to think that's bizarre, and that's kind of a fraud civic, and those things are being looked into immediately to be dealt with, meaning that this part and that part kind of goes to say that it put suspiciousness on the subject, which is Phoebe, based on her nose of, and then moves along. Now, once those things are gathered, it puts these things back and seeks how can the family, for example, deal with this without this exaggeration, and oftentimes it's not finding a solution autrement. And kind of congratulates the child, but the child doesn't. Uh, she's not getting this relief, no, the fondness, at all. Not. She's not getting this moment, and that could bother her news. So that moment, will say, cannot be released based on the mind of the child, based on that and that. In other words, her servo is constant activity based on the works of the universe. And as a child, never know until a moment in the Sabbath school class, as she was quite little, that way. And that caused her to comes in and moved along. So once those things were done, she gets a little congratulated dealing with these things, and would say that it would have preferred that getting these things to the Guyanese television, and and once that's done that way, the girl would sense that they would seek to flock her, those type of pup, and wherever she goes, this flocks her, and the bit with this seer and this with this combination, it becomes quite, whoa, what am I going to do? It's almost like dealing with paparazzis, quite hidden, and there's nothing that I could do about it. And I would say this is a most bizarre situation that this mom could have encountered and not able to share it with that mom. So why? Yes, no. The full philosophy of it is saying it cries perhaps in the inside, and the cries of the inside shattered the heart of the mom. So when it does it that way, the mom just stares and turns. She stares and that shatters more. So how to protect was removed, some people would say, would be, and soothe him and lead him back to there, and it would lead him directly to that part of himself and attacks La France and gets. So did he refuse that part shuts in, or is he seeking the mom to be able to get to a lawyer or get to a country and live there until they get that fed up. And that smartness upon the United States is enough. So it will say st and pause, and then deals with the length of the mission, st and pause, and let them know that their suspicion Christianity needs to be infringed upon him. And oftentimes, if you had put it there in writing, that could have considered with her and not apart. So whoever Greece uses that way is still banging the earth and sitting in church, and will have to requisition the police in a minute. And once those things are said, do not seek the woman. So now it puts this and this to want to be the seeker, and not even what a low life. In other words, a gutter person. And often for us, how to know that part. If you're seeking a bagar, then I have to sense that I am not there to record your conversation based on who you have damaged. So it sends a message to say that that little quarreling is quite Greek based on the hearings of them. So I don't know where they are. All I would know is you damage this of the mom and cannot recall those. You could say, based on the prophecies of the child, when she does this by laser, what is that happening? She gets this paid. And when she gets this paid, it puts her well, and then you would be able to send emails and not seek that part. Now that part would say, I do not know yet, based on how I'm dealing with the family. And if the family knows based on the shoe, then it would say that part would probably put these away and gets to that part where that fusion, we're having things, the universe, and that's affecting them now. And they're this way, that's causing the fusion in this part of the world to be unsafe, upgone, to just and enters like something of a back spiral and never to be heard of again. So it doesn't allow it based on and it's gone, but it say based on something of a coal goes that way, and when it goes that way, it just brings her this way and causes the banging to be heard even more, but causes it to come in based on that type of what Greece was looking for and could have boozed their own lives. We are seeing some things based on the main street, based on how it go way to America and getting this part here, if you have infringed these things upon them, just to have that lady come back from France to deal with this part. France cannot have it based gone, so it denies it they're suspecting and gets this part here. If it profits them, then it takes a nasty moment to move forward, and that nasty moment does this, and you're still, so that will be exposed one day. I don't know, it will be. So it says that how are we to deal with it? Well, how did you get yourself into this? So they will send the message, and the message seeks this of Greece and put it to the girl. So they would say that you probably seek to be the child based on that this type of pilier that you have, this M piliers, and when you seek to be the child, this falls upon you. You have to recognize, my God, it's a Negro child. So when it says that part, you proceed and what is this now? So you're putting it against yourself. Yay! Now once that is done, the other pup could know these things, perhaps not, but evidences would show based on, I don't know, introduction to this on the land, based on coming from France to this part here, and leave that part alone, would put these things there. And if America puts this against the child, then you're putting it against your Mati, perhaps your Mati, your kindred, and it flops America. Now, when you do that and it's somebody else's life, how do you deal with that is how you have to contemplate your life and not seek. So yes, it's accusing Greece of of imposterizing the girl's life based on the P. And once it accuses Greece, it's not interested in accusing you. It's through the lawyer. Now, once that is done, it's to that part there. Once that is known that way, then it comes with whatever else this access or that access, and up it goes. So once that is determined, then the girl will get back to how do you find that based on what she thinks. And it pulls in based on that type of choppings to say what is it that is not moving forward from this lady, is figuring out that part there. So if we did deal with a lot widows or black widows or brown recluse, repeating those things from Greece becomes very interesting this way. And would say, can we? And it doesn't really matter based on a Negro girl. So this will put them aside, you're thinking, so that you stay your Negro family and don't infringe on those type of Negroes, Negroids they call them, of that type of Guyana, based on any type of mental issues to be determined by America. And once those things seems to be degraded or take advantage of, the country will put this on them and determine these things, because you have lost this of yourselves. And once you have lost that of yourself, you're probably not able to determine things based on mulattoes of the seeds of that the pay of Russia up gone. Now, when I say up gone, finish, we don't have to deal with that anymore. So it comes back to that of tar. Are we seeking a crypt based on the seer? It suits the child and has to deal with this, something that puts these things well for the child and puts her bed well. And when it does it that way, it doesn't like to be disturbed and oftentimes seeks this type of conviviality to do so. But it doesn't mean she walks out of here powerful. It just means that it suits her for the future. Why, when this thing happens to her, it's suspecting that the fusion really hits the nose of the child hard, and those type of things could have disappeared from the planet and stops the evolution of man, all coming from this moan. So when this happens that way, you have to be able to soothe the child, not do this to the child, not it just and stops the child at a very young age, which completed her deja in preparation for her loins to be net years later. So oftentimes that age could have been 3 years old based on having a tricycle. Now when that happens that way, it seeks this of Guyana, and this of Guyana would often seek this of the child instead of seeking that prophecy. Now, if it was shredded this way, then the night before returned it and will be scribed. And when those things are done, the girl has to be up and ready in a minute so that the words flow. Now, is it seeking it based on the bed? Up, it's gone to be examined that way. In other words, it has to be able to do this, they're suspecting. And those people who just deals with this part, you just know that this part cannot be eliminated. So when you're digging this or this, that puts you away and you that way. So if you seek to do this, then you could have failed that way. And once that happens, it has a mechanism of having to push you to feel, basically speaking, what is it you are seeking from us has to be exposed and not used as a way to get to know the child up, gone, and not a way of seeking how she looks this way. So that part knows things there and has to be able to leave this woman alone. Once these things are done, these things will be put back. And once it does, and oftentimes once she does this part, then that part becomes safe and gone from her based on how they function. So this cannot be in the United States, unfortunately, when that part happens. And in other words, it puts her where her nose has to be. And that's why she would scout the lands. She would scout Paris, knowing that being in France chops her bank account based on the principle of this imposterization, and have to deal with this of her, with this lacking gone. So it will say when it does its part, then when I get to Paris, the bank was chopped again this last time and had to visit the American embassy to get that quickly. Flew back into Tennessee base and a woman this way, and stayed at the airport this way and get some insights this way. So this and up, so that, I don't know, she kind of puts it not as dwell. When you dwell, it's basically somebody who does this lacking, up, gone. So what would happen is you just never know, and you will believe it from never. You never know why she has a mechanism that clashes the universe. So once it does it, it shuts in and allow this part to move along. So it goes to say France, shuts in Guyana, puts her that way because the escape that way was necessary based on her feet. This feet, the real feet, and not what they have of a this quality they're suspecting. So this, so now it puts it with the real feet lacking. Why? It has to follow the hops of the child. And once you're seeking that cheat, it's not going to seek people to steal $1 billion. It's going to send the cops in there. And they are having a lot of problems with this lady based on having to do things to make sure, and people are not cooperating. So you have to know. So the girl, for example, if she has to go to the library, because these things cannot be branched in on the outside, and has to be able to deal with this lacking, for example, by man. So I would say, if I said that and it seems outrageous, then I would say I have to sense that I do have a little bit of juice left. I do have, which I get over yonder. So now that that's concluded, senses that it got a little quiet, and when it does, the girl has to anticipate an uh, not, and then it comes. So what it's sensing is an evil, the flesh. So when it does, it puts certain things that it's kind of offensive, perhaps. So the bar could be, no, don't touch the bar, based on a conversation. But if it doesn't say a word, then the bar becomes a problem this way, and puts it on the child to figure it out. A robotic activity becomes something of this they're suspecting. So a robotic would put seek this. So what is this? If it's considered based on Greece, then it picks up Greece. That's way lacking. So once it picks it up this way lacking, it seeks Greece to go and accuse Greece of putting the child this way and not that way. So that part will say, I do have the paroles for those things, but it senses that it wants to get the exact with that part of her. So when you see her with a 32, you would sense that you don't need the deja of the child if it's your son or daughter. So you will sense that that puts it in by America. So how the girl would know so is by using something of this to spin based on that soleil. And when you spin it, it seeks this of the child and hits that part of the kingdom and screws it in, and there it arouses. So she rises a bit and comes in, but the girl suspects that she didn't use her mechanism, so it really didn't matter based on seeing who did it. So once that's done, Greece would seek to put that lady to be buried in Greece. So that becomes an anal matter for the child based on the last visit. Why I do not want to be put in that there. Once you get it, you may go. Now, what are you wanting man to know about Greece is quite dangerous because of the prophecies of the child. In other words, there are scribes for those things, and if they have failed you, then you have to be circled now everywhere you go on this earth to say this part has failed you, and if it's seeking the bellies of the Guyanese, then it puts it there. So when it fails you, you are going to pioche this nose to get the job done quietly and call it an A or something that is underneath. And once you destroyed La France that way, then you have to be destroyed that way. So that way is not calling for that there, it's calling for a massive destruction that way. And once it does it that way, it slays this part of the child and arouses that kingdom and captures everyone that seeks a stroke. So it rises that way. So when that fusion takes place, she cannot be in America. Now, oftentimes, if you are seeking death for that person, then if it was to be taken care of America, it would kill that Greek nation first, like Israel or Gaza, and put the child at 5 by how it scraps the project, puts the cups away, and up it goes with that dynasty to never be spoken of. So oftentimes the mechanism have to be boom, 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 and not boom shakalaka based on the evil of man. So what seeks Greece? With if it's this country, then it will be caught that way. So it would say, do not speak of death or suicide with her based on 5 years old. And comes the man. But it kind of tells the story to the family based on sometimes it's looking that way, then sometimes she's not allowed to go on based on her, and this could be testing to see how. And she would say her appareil says Galaxy she purchased in France 180 euros plus, so it puts it just like her stuff. And it would say when she does that in France, she wasn't able to get a SIM card, so she's not getting phone calls or internet. So it kind of puts her in a dilemma, and knows but does not know based on this type of phone. I cannot know Why? That's part there. Was it known too late based on the bamboo? You have a problem. Whoever, if it's France, then the problem was you cannot put the phone on the bamboo, but it could say immediately after the girl was divorced, and that's why it becomes crucial family wise. So you made it extremely difficult for us to be able to rekindle with the fusion, because if you're doing it now, then you are rousing that part. And oftentimes it was pitched to you based on how it was caught this way. And when it does it this way, in France, for example, there, it never happened that way. So this part up to France based on this part here, this of her shoe. So it says this of her shoes has to deal with, and you are putting a suicide in somebody else. So up philosophical. Now, once it does it that way, then it puts it against that seer, Greece, and was touched. So once you were touched, you were seeking to break that rib bone and will be touched tonight. So if you sense that the girl says these things, then these things says, please take these things and put it away. So if you're seeking it, then that could seek, okay, the kingdom says surrender, and when she surrenders, she goes where? So every day you would seek surrendering, and the girl is still there. She did not die. So you may go now. So it will say that they are wanting to put it against America, and could have already have how it's transcribed for them to do so, and is ashamed. So now they have to go now. So it gets back to this that part. So in Guyana, shuts in that nose. So how would I deal with that part? Would be a kuto. So the kuto this way, and this puts it this way if it was stolen there. So it says when you're seeking to deny that part of her, she found a kuto. Where did she find a kuto? Well, the kuto came to her. So when she went to that part, did you seek a kuto? Probably not. So it tells them to put this away, and that part cannot do so. It just them. So once that is, then the girl could move forward to the lawyer based on, I said, calendar. My calendar, so this calendar would belong to the girl, and that the note, so see? So the girl would probably make sure to that based on this type of kuto, and then puts it in here, and that other type of kuto. This type of kuto has a very protective of it. The other kuto was based on that part there. So that will say the slippers can hate Guyana not. It can do this to Guyana and get your ear shut based on Greece in a minute to deal with that part of which the nose smells a bit, and then it shuts. Now, when it comes to France, based on this accusation of the dad, it can be very bitter. And this type of dynasty can accommodate them because it's their chosen cherries. And there's nothing the girl could do to it based on the dejas that she has seen. So it puts it back and never mention those things. In other words, the accomplishments of the task of where it smells. So can she sense this? Can she sense a double? That we know. She sends just this part and makes somebody as a lady of the church a bit happier, but dangerous woman of how to deal with her. And it goes, and the rest has to flee. So once she feels that way, then it smells it a bit, comes in, and getting that there becomes this type of mixture with that grandmother. So this part of Guyana up goes based on La France, up based on this country, of how the grandmother would test them with these type of things. And the stealing and the hatred, even that type of charcoal and the oregano and the cilantro and the oils and those parts, to see, are you capable of resolving a seer, your eyes past seer now, with this type of power. You suspecting? But when you dash the woman in trench and kill, you want to face it by the slaughters, because you know they're function this way. So it will put you to face the lawyer, got your money, and they're cutting you now. So now it deals with that Guyana up, and then sentences, when you block this, then you block that of Nassau, and have to surrender billions you're accused of stealing. So you just have to say it will, and you would seek this conviviality. So your eyes passing La France to seek this woman to want to be with. It's a scornful matter, so they will sense to the family. This is what men seeks based on wanting to live. So I have to take you and deliver you to the police. So what am I going to do? Abuse the police and tell him I'm seeing your penis based on that uh, a spin with cars, so it seeks to drive itself. So that type of philosophy says that's Greece with America, with the drive coming from Greece. So once you're following that, you're not capable of jeering anymore. In other words, the puissance has been devoured. Now, coming back to America with this carry, I was carried this way by this of Greece, and sits in France and couldn't do anything about it. So it had to do and stop. So coming back to America was the only way, figuring out the path of immigration with that X, how you would deal with it, with an imposter of Greece. And when you fall that low, the girl has to investigate. Was it the couteau, a simple couteau? And then since this was already taken care of, so the girl would put this to the test to recognize that it puts it out, to say the actual getting to meet her is triggering things in the universe. So the girl would put this outside and deals with this of sensing that I don't want to deal with it because it's herself. And once she gets to that route, then man seeks to put France to their knees. So you have to depend on heaven, but not the heaven based on the crushings of the in God we trust in this country, based on the heavens of non-atheism. In other words, you have to have a driven behavior to believe, to see if Greece is not seeking those things for America to come back. So once that is done, the girl would set herself to kind of have a coupe of this, getting to a coupe would be a car that is decapotable of France. So that part oftentimes leads to somebody of this sticking around you, and that becomes fatal because she will not be allowed to get to her destination with a coupe. So oftentimes the only place would do this to that part. It's placed, if you're placing this, then oftentimes if you whisk it off to that Michigan, then that's something positive of what France seeks from these conversations. So sometimes it deviates based on if the girl gets sucious, they're thinking. So it will deal with that. Uh, uh, when you're dealing with anything that is that way and did a committed crime, then it cannot be revealed. So it leaves it alone. So now the girl will get to that part, and oftentimes if it's emptied, if it has these things in there and it was emptied, then it calls for a massive conspiracy, and that's what the girl will gather from this mission and consider to put herself cachet, hide herself. And when it's done that part, does it look bad for the girls? Obviously, and knows that, my God, I would not imagine this for myself, but and finds myself in that position, ramming a bit and a bit and a bit. So once that is done, the girl kind of and and leaves herself alone while we're having to deal with this of the universe right now. And once they're doing this right now, it's allowing the girl to kind of find this of herself in this Madison. And oftentimes it can reveal itself only with this part of herself. It's this with Susie with it. And when this Susie's with it, then she puts it back nicely and kind of exposes that part of herself, the valleys right there. And oftentimes it comes with this type of that's Rue right there. That's her valleys. So once it does it that way, then it exposes really this of herself. Now, once it exposes this herself, it does it this way, that way. So it could do this to man, and it puts man that way, and then crashes them. So it has to be left alone based on the phone of the child is not available, and this type of things have to put it on they based on as she studies in the library. Man seeks that of her, that of her. And when you seek that of her, she has to allow that aspect of her to be able to weigh upon the planet. And once she rises up and you are presumptuously seeking, it and comes in and has to kind of up and go. So once those things have been determined, it wiggles out and go. So it would say the house, these are being examined too late. That downstairs gets to the records, figure out who left things of a water bottles type. The next door, that building that shook, things of a Water Hill Road, and these types that she visited will come, but this emergency and things of this, the building behind that building, and off that part, if those people have to get back in there. And once it starts to get there, then we could applaud and do not this, just yay. And that's probably it for mom today. And she transmits of herself, and so she goes